Legacy, it was a pretty electric week for those who hopefully you made it a part of your holiday celebration or took a break to pay attention as much as you could. If you did, you notice most of us were in the green this week, only 2 teams in the red. Sadly, one of them was in the semifinals, which you never like to see, but we did have some epic matchups, some close calls, or even more impressively, a massive performance from our number 1 seed. So let's get to that before we look to preview next week's matchups. Well, crap. If you were hoping for an upset story and you wanted Rushkey to come all the way back, he had a season where he was back and forth, had his runs. This was textbook for storybook finish, and unfortunately for you, Rushkey, you bumped into the one guy in the semifinals that you couldn't or wouldn't want to face. Actually, you were the third highest scoring as well. So the other guys in the semifinal, though, are fortunate they weren't in this one, or this would have been our finals. Gene, 220. I mean, come on. How many times now has it been over 20 or 200 points? You're pushing 2 like crazy now. I will talk about Ken's team first here. Your boy Caleb stepped up for you huge. He knew how much it meant to you. He was the quarterback 4. And Brock Bowers, who I made fun of a little bit at the beginning of the year, is just spiking it in my face. He was the tight end 1. Although tight ends didn't have massive performances this week, we're going to find running backs hella did. Speaking of which, we got the running back 4 here in Saquon, and obviously Bijan performing super well. Wide receivers, Brian Thomas was the wide receiver 3, so that's obviously something you're happy about. And just in general, I mean, looking at your flex here, looking at your defense, which was the defense number 1, just points all over the board. You really only had a small underperformance in your wide receiver 3 and obviously your tight end. If we take a look at the bench, kind of more of the same. You had points that could have been thrown out there, and certainly Rushkey, I think you would have felt a little bit cleaner, maybe less showers had you put Richardson instead of your boy Rodgers. Just, I'm not going to go into the Moderna stuff, but you are watching it. You would have lost anyway, though, because honestly, 221 is pretty much, I can look it up, I think it's pretty much our top score almost ever. So Gene, you really, really got to convince you're going to try and run it back, trying to go double down, back-to-back champions here. Rushkey did your best to stop him, but you're looking strong going in the bronze medal game. No slouch here, Woody. 161 was a solid score. I wasn't taking a shot at you. It looks like just Rushkey had a little bit more, but didn't matter. It's about the matchups that you make, and you played one of the 2 guys this week that were in the red as opposed to the green. Now, Connor, this is very much unlike you, but fair enough. If you look at your quarterbacks, that's where this one happened. You had Hurts, who got, like his name suggests, hurt. No jokes aside, the concussions are legit, and he was out pretty early. Allen kept playing, but for those who watched the game, you saw the hand thing. He had dead arm for pretty much the entire 4th quarter, which drastically changed what they could do. And if you look on the other side of this coin, who did benefited? Well, I'd say Cook probably got a few more carries then, because they definitely needed him to carry a few more things. And weirdly enough, of all the players in this game, Cook is the only one who cracked the top 5. So in this particular matchup, even though we had, like I said, we had running backs go off. So Gibbs in any other week would have been a top 5 finisher, but in this case, the only one. We did have some disappointing defenses. Now looking on our bench, there were some points to be had, but realistically, this was too much of a gap. Connor, just you live and die by the quarterback sword. In this particular case, you might want to be watching out for quarterback health moving into next round, but I'll save that when we get to the previews. Woody, I believe this is your first Legacy final. I know back in the Kenya days, you had success as well, but that league doesn't matter anymore. This is the one that's going, so congrats on your first final. To some people, the 5th, 6th matchup doesn't really matter, but these 2 people aren't those people. This mattered a lot to me. I definitely didn't want to finish 6th. I wanted to be running for 5th, and he wanted to bounce back. And he kind of did. Now I'm happy with my near 160. That's going to win you most matchups, but not this week. Rennie was the 2nd highest scoring team, so showing that had he make that semifinal, that he would have definitely caused some problems as long as he didn't bump into Gene. Now how he did it was some huge matchups here. He definitely had some performances. If we look at Justin Jefferson, that was clearly the wide receiver 1. He also had the quarterback 2 in Goff. He actually also had, if I look at the bench here, quarterback 5 sitting there just waiting to be had. So did he make the right call though? Although look at the difference between him and Herbert, not so much. We can't poke holes at this. His running backs maybe that's the disappointing part, but obviously he just did enough all the way through, and his highs were certainly as high as they needed to be. And then his Baltimore defense was a top 5. It was the 4th defense. Next to the 3rd defense, which was me, I was no kind of complete runoff here. Achane was a top 5. He was the running back 3. Jaden Daniels was the quarterback 1, which was great, but it was my wide receivers that really let me down. I've had these guys for a bit, and they really haven't performed too much. And last minute, making a tight end change did cost me 7 points, but if you look here, 7 points didn't quite cut it in the end. Although I do think with a little more maneuvering, maybe I could have snuck this one out. It just wasn't meant to be. I'm 6th, Rennie's 5th, and we're the only 2 who get to sit and just watch this week because our seasons are done. In the consolation, I will run through quickly. Marco, you were the only other one, other than the person I've already mentioned, that was in the red this week. And you did have some decent performances. When it came down to it, though, your running backs just kind of stunk it. Now, your tight end was just outside of the top 5, which is quite nice. I think he was the tight end 6, technically. And you did have some decent quarterback performances. They were over their predicteds, but your defense did let you down. I'd say defense, I meant quarterback. Going crazy here. And you certainly had to put some running backs in that you didn't necessarily want to. Jeff, you did fantastic. I mean, Allen was the wide receiver 2. Everyone else was treading enough water. I mean, Debo technically was the wide receiver 6, although he's playing more like a running back right now. And crazy enough, almost 30 points, and Connor's not in the top 5, but I'll take 30 points or 29.6, although you might have some health concerns as we move forward. If you just look at the bench, there were a few people to kind of mix things up again. Bo Nix could have made an appearance, but it wasn't your quarterbacks that held you back. It really was your running backs, and you didn't have too many answers for that, although Walker might have been the start over Charbonnet there. I just don't know if you were paying attention at the last minute or you just didn't want to deal with the health issue. Either way, Jeff, you're going to the consolation final. Marco, you're going to be playing for the toilet bowl. The other end of that toilet bowl will be Timmer. Now, you were 10th at the regular season finish, but we did have some ties there, so you are going to be playing to see if you can up your status. Maxon, you just missed out on the playoffs, so you want to show everybody with the consolation championship that you deserve to be in the playoffs. And with this matchup in 165, you kind of are showing that maybe you did hold some water there and maybe you got screwed over. Maxon, you had some weird kind of quarterback performances. They were over and they were fine, but you didn't have anyone go off, but you had enough to get by. In terms of going off, though, you had the running back 2, who's been a huge pickup all year, and you did have the defense 5. If we look at the bench, you did have some points to play with here, although Worthy would have been a gutsy start. Mooney maybe with Penix, is that a new combination to pay attention to? But were you really going to put 2 Atlanta wide receivers out there? I don't know. You're crafty. Maybe you would. Tim, on your side, you live and die by 2 people. It was Taylor as the running back 1. This is the performance that if you had to play him in like a big semi, this could have crushed it. Williams was also up there. He was our wide receiver 4. Those are the 2 guys that went off for you. Kittle as well, tight end 2. But when you were cold, you were cold. Cooper not doing much. Stafford not doing much. But if we look at the 156, it's not like you weren't doing enough to win most matchups. It's just you bumped into a guy who was a little better this week. I'm not going to try and obsess over predicteds because we haven't gone through and made the waiver wires, and I don't know how much people are going to be paying attention to some of these seeding matchups. I mean, I always do, but I'm crazy. This is our toilet bowl. If we take a look, I do think some of these people might move up, maybe not. Right now, it's got Timmer at a slight advantage. I think anything within 55, 56% is still a coin toss because sometimes we fall in love with these numbers a little bit too much. I think this one's going to be just decided on kind of if there is an overall steady or if people like the Taylors of the world are just going to come out and punch it again. I do not expect him to have another 40 points, but against the Giants, 25 to 30 is definitely in the cards. Timmer looks like the advantage right now. Marco, let's see if you can rebound and get some of those running backs in. I say it every year, and I mean it every year. There's only 2 people who finish the season on a 2-game win streak, and that is our champion, and that is our consolation champion. So for these 2 people, you were the first 2 left out, and now you're showing why you should have made the playoffs in going after each other here. Like I've said every other time, I expect a little bit of movement here, although we do have, I would say, probably the most likely starting lineups, but who knows, maybe you make some changes. Maxon, maybe you're not happy with the running back role, although I don't know who you're going to get if you're going to play the waiver game or if you're going to go to the coin toss. That is, right now, like I said, within this percentages, I do think it shows Maxon with a slight advantage, which I would agree to, but Jeff has some heavy hitters, so this one's certainly not locked up. If you look at this, it looks like it's over and done with and Connor's going to walk away with it, but I think health is going to play a huge factor here. Is Hurts going in? Is Allen 100%? Are these the kind of matchups they want to go with? Now, I think Connor has made his adjustments. He also has, obviously, quarterback depth. We've talked about this. Tua against Cleveland could be putting up some points, so let's see how the week pans out. Right now, though, it does have Connor as the favorite, but let's be honest, you can't count Rushke out. He's been battling all year. He definitely has some receivers with some home run potential, and anyone with Henry and Bowers right now, you're looking pretty solid. So this could come down to just some decisions. Again, we got Richardson against the Giants. Is that going to be his call instead of Rodgers, or is he going to run with it? Who knows, and who's to say? But do remember, gentlemen, fourth place gets a high five and a kick in the pants. Third, there are some cash considerations, so I'd be paying attention. In our final 1 versus 3, although if you've been paying attention the last few weeks, Woody's been coming on and often putting up a top 2, top 3, top 4 performance week after week after week. I don't expect him to be taking this week off. I'm super excited to see who he decides to play. I think for Gene, you got kind of the well-oiled machine. I use Gene machine way too much. I do expect some changes here, primarily on maybe some defenses, adds and drops, but you guys do have a super interesting bench. Right now, having Cook out, right now having Jonnu Smith out, Penix could maybe make a factor. We got San Francisco's running back situation. I think Brian Robinson would be an interesting start after last week, but who knows what you all are thinking. Realistically, this might come down to, I would be shocked if this is a 150-150 coin toss. To win this thing, maybe 175 is the minimum, or let's be honest, Woody, if you want to take Gene down, you got to be willing to go push over 2 because you know he's willing to do it. And with the Cincinnati connection, though, against Denver, going to be a lot of hit or misses. I'm super excited to see it. The only thing I'm kind of bummed on is this is one of the only matchups where we don't really dip into the Christmas games. This is going to be more saved for a traditional Saturday, Sunday, and even Monday affair. I don't know that we get a lot of that Christmas magic, but maybe some of you want to take the day off, not pay attention, and then really get into it this weekend. So best of luck to both of you. Are we going to have back-to-back champions, or do we have our first ever champion in Woody? Only time will tell. Legacy, the table is set. We now know what place we are fighting for, or if you're Rennie and I, which we can look back and observe the 4 matchups that will be. Should be super exciting. So many of them look like coin tosses, but I know there's a lot of adds and drops to have, so there's no reason to overly obsess, but do hope that you make the holiday tradition that apparently is now NFL on Christmas on Netflix. It's a weird world we're living in. Either way, we get pretty much almost every day for the next 4 or 5 will be football related if you choose to be, and if you include the college game, it's going to be an awesome next week. But for our particular league, if you're playing for something that matters or matters to you, I do wish you a genuine best of luck this week.